Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Well, the first thing you might notice is that I'm not Rev Jean Marie. Rev Jean Marie was scheduled to speak today, and she's at home recovering from a case of bronchitis. So I know you'll join me in sending her our love and affirming speedy healing for her. So Rev Jean Marie, if you're watching, we love you, and we send you our prayers. So here we are, the second week of our 4 Agreements series. Rev Michael kicked us off last week with the first agreement, be impeccable with your word. And what strikes me about this book, and Michael kind of talked about this last week, it's a pretty small book, small in stature anyway, with these 4 simple instructions or invitations, and yet it's very profound. And the author makes big promises too. I don't know if you all remember this, but last week when Michael said, be impeccable with your word, and by fulfilling this one agreement that you can experience heaven on earth. So today's second agreement is don't take anything personally. And there's a big promise with this one. The promise with this one is that you can be immune from hell. So what does this mean? If you've been in Unity for a while, if you're new to Unity, might be helpful to know that in Unity, we don't hold heaven or hell as geographical locations. They are not places that we are going to arrive at someplace in the future. Rather, they are states of consciousness that we have access to in any given moment by how we direct our thought, how we are perceiving ourselves. So the good news is, well, I guess maybe the bad news is if you find yourself in hell, you put yourself there. But the good news is, you have a get out of hell free card. And that is given to you by your divine birthright, by being able to align yourself with the truth of who you are. And so when I think about this agreement of don't take anything personally, I was reviewing it yesterday, and I was reading the book, and in one place, Don Miguel Ruiz says, people can take just about anything personally. They can even take the weather personally. And I thought, well, that's kind of silly. What's more impersonal than the weather? How are you going to look at the weather and think that take it personally, take offense to it? And then I woke up this morning at about 4:30. I meditated. It was about 5 a.m. I went to let the dogs outside. I opened the door, and what I can only describe as an icy blast of glacier-type wind, I don't know, hit me in the face. And I heard myself say out loud, okay, I'm alone at this point, no, thank you. Now, to whom was I addressing this no, thank you? I had taken offense at that. No, thanks, I don't want this, go away. Let me just say, winter is coming. I would kick myself if I didn't say that. So it is coming, and it's here. But do I need to be offended? It's coming either way, right? And I also think about when people have come up to me and said this phrase, don't take this personally. Yeah, there's almost always a but, and it's almost never a compliment what comes after this. Don't take this personally, but you look fabulous today. No one has ever said that to me. If they had, I might do a better job at not taking things personally. I might. We'll see. So why isn't it easy then to just say, I'm not going to take things personally? Why is it still an issue? And I love that Don Miguel Ruiz goes into this a little bit in the beginning of the book. He talks about this idea that when we are born, we inherit a book of law. All right? This book of law, part of it is based on what the world's understanding of how people should be, how they should interact with each other. Part of it's based on our own culture, and part of it's our own families, the schools we grow up in, the religious institutions we grow up in. And we download this book of law based on people's approval. So when people in our lives, typically our authority figures in our lives, approve of what we do, okay, yes, this is one thing I need to do. When we act in a certain way that gets disapproval, I need to avoid doing that. The problem is the book of law isn't necessarily based on what is real and what is true. It is based on people's experiences, their wounds, things that they need to heal themselves. And so sometimes some of the things that we find in our book of law, you might look at and say, how the heck did that get in there? And so the thing happens is I create my own book of law in my own head. This is where we get really weird with it. And it's telling me what I need to do to be perfect. My version of what being a perfect version of Stacy Collins would look like. And guess what? I never live up to it. Because I'm human. Right? Yes, I'm a spiritual being, but I'm also a very human being. So I never live up to it. So I punish myself. We all do this. We punish ourselves when we break a law in that book of law. And then we reward ourselves when we uphold the law. And this is where, like I said, we get even a little weirder than that, because guess what? I assume that you can read my mind and know what my book of law is. And you assume that I can read your book of law. So I hold you to the standards that I have in my own mind, even though you have no idea what's going on in here. And I judge you for it. And you do the same to me. This is part of the human experience. Because what comes along with that book of law is the judge. And the judge judges not only ourselves, but other people. And I love this term that Don Miguel Ruiz talks about. He says, when we're growing up and we're getting all this, okay, if I do this, I get approval. If I do this, I get disapproval. And we're really trying to figure out how we need to be to get approval. It's coming from the authority figures. But as soon as we are old enough, we've become auto-domesticated animals. Because we don't even need anybody else to disapprove of us anymore, because we do it ourselves. And so we don't need the evidence out here. We've got enough of it. So when somebody comes up to us and says, don't take this personally, but that's just proof. And we have a choice, though. What the Four Agreements is inviting us into is every time someone comes with, don't take this personally, but, or they don't even give you the warning, they just say something to you, you have a choice whether you're going to agree with that and confirm it, ingest it, or you don't have to agree. You know that you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree even with your own inner judge. And so sometimes we see that people, have you ever had anybody in your life, or maybe you've been one of these people that say, well, you know, okay, this may be true, because what we're talking about when we take it personally, it's never about us, it's about the other person. It's about what they think that you should be doing according to their own book of law. And yet, there are sometimes we have people in our lives that say, well, I just tell it like it is. That's what my job is. I'm just a person that tells it like it is. Well, have you noticed that nobody ever has to use that phrase when they're talking about something that's actual and true, like gravity? Nobody says, I just tell it like it is. If you drop this pencil, it's going to hit the floor. Sorry, that's just me. I just tell it like it is. If somebody's saying, I just tell it like it is, it's usually probably more accurate if they were to say, I just tell it like I am. Because this is how they are understanding the world. A little closer to the truth is when people say, I just call it like I see it. Because that is, they're seeing things through their perception. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus talks about, he says, well, why is it so easy for you to notice the speck in your brother's eye, but you don't notice the whole wooden beam in your own? Or he said, another version says that you don't notice the splinter in your brother's eye, but you have a whole log in your own eye. And I believe that this is what he's talking about here, that it's so easy for us to see where other people are falling short. And I know we have a lot of judgments about ourselves too, but a lot of times we can't be okay with those, so we project those out onto other people and throw that whole wooden beam onto them. And notice the slightest thing that they do wrong. And so Don Miguel Ruiz says that when we are caught up in this idea of needing approval, of fearing disapproval, and seeing the world as an exchange of these approvals and disapprovals, we are caught in what's called the metote. This is an illusion. It says the Hindus call it Maya. And you know, I was looking in some of our unity books, and I found in the Revealing Word, Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore, he talks about mind in many different ways. He has a lot of metaphysical definitions for mind. There's one with a capital M, and that is the one mind that we are all expressions of, divine mind. And he has a lowercase m, that is a place in us where our human mind meets the divine that is within us. And then he has a double M mind, the mortal mind. And he talks about the mortal mind is that part of our mind that functions only as a result of what the five senses can perceive. So we see what we think is happening here, right? We take that in and we make interpretations of it without consulting that higher wisdom with ourselves, kind of a bit separated from spirit. And we have another teacher who I just absolutely love, Imelda Shanklin, another early Unity teacher, who wrote a book called What Are You? And she talks about how we can live in this world, that the real or the fictitious. And the fictitious world is this world in which we think that everything is a matter of people's perceptions of us, that this is who we've come here to be, is somehow just be a manager of perceptions of our own and other people's. And she says that when we are caught in this, that it is a form of spiritual amnesia because we have forgotten the truth of who we are. Because it's very seductive, this idea of getting approval. It's very seductive because as human beings, we're tribal, we're connected, we love to be in community. So when we don't receive that approval, it can be very painful. Don Miguel Ruiz talks about the fact that when we are in this space, when we believe this metote, when we are so caught up in this dream world, that we have a resistance to life itself. He says that we even fear life in that moment more than we fear death. He says this is because we have to bend ourselves in so many ways to get approval. We don't feel that we can be our authentic self. We are scared to be authentic because what if we're rejected? What if we're not loved? And we're also doing this to ourselves at the same time. And so we have a choice, though. When someone offers us rejection, when someone offers us disapproval, he said it's like somebody's offering you poison. You get to decide whether you ingest it or not. But sometimes when we were younger, we didn't really get the choice. We just downloaded everything. And so as adults, now we have the opportunity to say, wait a minute. We can look at something somebody's offering us before we take it. Don't take candy from a stranger. Maybe don't take poison from a stranger, right? Don't take poison from someone you know or someone you do know. When I was growing up, one of the messages that I got, and again, Reverend Michael talked about this last week, to be very cautious about blaming our parents. And for those of you who are parents, you know we are doing the best we can. We are simply doing the best we can. And we got messages that we are passing to our children too. And so some of the messages that we're given with the intention of trying to protect our children, or protect our loved ones, are sometimes messages that aren't exactly affirming. And one of the messages I got when I was a kid that it wasn't great to stand out. I love to entertain. I love to be the comedian. I love to make up stories and act them out. And I was told, well, when you do that, it sometimes makes other people feel bad. When you stand out too much, other people feel diminished. And that's the message I got. And I got it enough, and I believed it enough, that I began to make myself small as possible as I became an adult. One of the ways that manifested is that I became completely terrified to do any kind of public speaking. Any kind. And I don't even mean that public. I mean where 4 or more are gathered here. I'd be in a Unity class, and the teacher would say, okay, we're just going to go around, easy peasy, say your name, how you found Unity, and my hands would begin to get clammy. I could feel my heart beating out of my chest. All I had to do was say my name and say how I found Unity. But I was frightened. I just would completely clam up. And so it was about 2016. Some of y'all might have been here for this. A guy named Tom Bird came here. He's a writer facilitator, right? And he was doing a 3-day writer's workshop over in the pyramid. And I was so excited because it was like 2 full days of just writing in your own little bubble. I think he had cricket sounds playing. Does anybody remember? It seemed like there were crickets chirping, tapes of crickets chirping in the background. All was well. I was in bliss. I had a great time until the 3rd day. When about 2 hours into the 3rd day, he said, okay, to close out this workshop, what we're going to do is I'm going to pass the microphone around, and I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to talk about what you wrote in your book and to share about how you're feeling. Oh, dear Lord. I was so scared. I said, I felt almost a panic come over me. Felt the typical clammy hands, getting nervous. And as the microphone got closer and closer and closer to me, I thought, I got to make a move. I got to make a move. And so I'm about to confess something to you all because I know y'all can keep a secret. And that is, in that moment, what I decided my best option, my option for survival was, pulled my phone out of my pocket. Would you look at that? I have a very important phone call. I'm so sorry, folks. I'm going to need to step on out of the pyramid. As I stayed on my fake phone call, I mean, I wasn't miming a conversation. I didn't go that deep into the to the disguise. But I stayed outside long enough that everybody would be finished sharing by the time I got back in. So, yes, I'm fully admitting, I lied in church to get at us sharing. And they still let me become a minister. Can you believe it? Maybe just barely. Oh, yes, thank you. Maybe just barely. But the point is that in that moment, I had fully believed that if I were to speak, I wouldn't have maybe said it exactly like that. That if I were to speak now, it would disrupt everybody here. It would be worthless, or I couldn't have articulated it. It was after time and going to ministerial school and doing some deep work and having to speak in homiletics class that I was able to uncover what agreements that I had been agreeing to. So I invited us all to look at these when we have some kind of fear, some kind of block, some kind of thing that we believe about ourselves, that I can't do this because of blank. Is it true? Is it true? Where did this originate? Where did this idea originate from? Okay, and maybe it served me for a part of my life, but is this something I really want to hang on to forever? Or can I let it go? And you know, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about this, and this is an interesting point, I think, that he says, whenever people say something to you, to not take it personally, meaning do not take it on yourself. He says, when you take something personally, I think this is interesting, he said it's the height of self-importance. Now, I would have disagreed with you in that moment in the pyramid because I felt anything except self-important. I thought I should be very quiet. I thought I should not be seen, all that, right? And what I understand what he's saying about self-importance is it was all about me. It was all about me. In that moment, do you think I heard any other person sharing of what their stories were about? No, because I was in complete terror about what I was going to have to do. It was all about, I thought the whole thing was all about me. And so we can look at this idea of when we take things personally. When I think that whatever face you're making when you come into this room is about me, you could see, well, there's a little something wrong with that. Maybe it isn't all about me. So what can we do if we aren't quite happy with the book of law that we currently are living our lives from? Is there another way? Can we just say, don't take things personally, don't take things personally, and eventually we won't? Maybe. But I think one of the things that we can look at is a new way. What will replace taking things personally? Well, if I don't take things personally, I'm going to have a lot of free time because I spend a lot of time thinking about how people have offended me, judged me, right? What are you going to do with all this free time now that you don't take anything personally? Elizabeth Sand Turner is another one of, we have some amazing unity teachers, New Thought teachers, going back to the beginning of the movement. They've written some very powerful works, and she was a metaphysician. Ooh, I can say that, who wrote 3 different books that were interpretations of different parts of the Scripture. And in Your Hope of Glory are metaphysical interpretations of the Gospels. And I love what she said. She talks about Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Because this was really his sermon to give, this is the way to be, right? This is the way, this is a new way to interact. And she said, he says he didn't come to abolish all the old law, but what he came to do was to help us understand and live a spiritually fulfilled idea of the law, to interpret it spiritually. And in Unity, one of the ways that we look at the Bible is we look at it as the evolution of human consciousness over time, of how we understand the authority that we were maybe giving out at one point. And she talks about, Elizabeth Santurner talks about how we can think of the 10 Commandments as the original book of law in the Scripture. And they are filled with thou shalt nots, which kind of sounds like that judge voice, right? Do not do this or else. And she said when Jesus came to do the Sermon of the Mount, how did he start it? Blessed are the, not thou shalt not. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who thirst for righteousness. And he ended with, blessed are the peacemakers. And Elizabeth Santurner says that the peacemakers in this case are people who are at peace within themselves, who have given up judging themselves, and who have realized that they are one with the divine. They can fully love themselves, and now they can fully love humanity. They can only want peace for you because they only want peace for themselves. These are the peacemakers. And I think we can add, blessed are those who do not take things personally. Because once we do not take things personally, we have no desire for anyone to take things personally for anyone else either. We don't have any desire that somebody else should behave the way we need them to in order for us to be happy. We know that that's not sustainable for us to do it, to live in a way that make people happy. I don't know, some of you may have even tried that. Even if you tried as hard as you could today, I am going to live my life to never make anybody mad, never offend anyone, never upset anyone, make everyone as happy as possible. How far do you think you'd get? And would you be made any happier in the process, or would you just be wrung out and miserable? I'm going to guess that's a little closer to the truth. There's the idea of freedom in this for all of us. This is what is here for us when we no longer live in a way that is contingent upon other people's approval. And even for our own approval, some of you might be thinking, because I kind of thought it when I was reading this, well, wait a minute. You're talking about this book of law, but surely there are some things that we can all agree to doing. Surely there are some things that we can all agree to not doing, right? But when you are at peace with yourself, let me just ask you, just check in with yourself. When you feel fully at peace, think about a time that you were just fully at peace with yourself, that you just felt a love and appreciation for your life, for the beings in your life, for having the gift of life itself. Could you ever, in that moment, have a desire to harm anyone else? Could you ever, in that moment, be confrontational? You simply wouldn't. There's something when you're at peace with yourself, just like the peacemakers in the Sermon on the Mount, that a peacemaker simply just wants peace for everyone else. And it's an easy way to be. There's a quote from Adyashanti that I want to share with you. He's an American-born spiritual teacher. And he says, until the whole world has freedom to agree or disagree with you, until you have given everyone the freedom to like you or to not like you, to love you or to hate you. It's big. To see things the same way you see them or to see them differently, until you have given the whole world its freedom, you cannot have freedom. So while that feels huge, we are just one moment away from doing it. We get a new opportunity every single time we interact with someone to give them the freedom of being the way that they are, or to trying to force them into an agreement to be the way you need them to be. We have the opportunity to either take the poison that is offered to us from someone who's intentionally trying to give it to us or is very well meaning in trying to give it to us. We have the opportunity to free ourselves. Say, no, thank you. I'm done with that. So what I would like to invite us all now in this moment is to go into prayer. Go ahead and just, if you would, just settle back into that space with which we began earlier. What I am aware of in this moment is that each one of us, each beautiful human being on this planet, we have the right to be free. We have the right to be free of our self-judgments. We have the right to be free of our own condemnations. We have the right to be free of the addiction for approval from others. And so what I know and affirm for everyone, the sound of my voice, that there's a realization right here, right now, that as an expression of the divine, you are already completely worthy. You are completely whole. Knowing and trusting that the universe itself needs you to express in an authentic way, needs you to be nothing but yourself and your complete self. And by doing so, you have given a gift to the world that is unique and as wonderful as you are. And so it is. Amen. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here today.
Watching this message today, I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.